Despite sharp recriminations by India, pro-Khalistan rallies with posters that openly call for violence against Indian diplomats will go ahead from Canada to Canberra. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Today we are looking at the madness of the Khalistani extremism groups that are amping up their presence mostly in Canada, but also in pockets of the United States of America, Australia, and the United Kingdom. These pro-Khalistan groups are now slated to hold separatist rallies, so-called war zone rallies, and the posters that have publicized these events have actually taken a very dangerous turn. These posters have had images of top Indian diplomats plastered across them, holding them responsible for designated terrorist Harjeet Singh Nijjar, who was killed recently in the middle of June in Canada. There is a call to avenge these killings. In other words, there is an open call for the killing of Indian diplomats. Despite a demarche, protestations by the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and Trudeau's denials of being soft on Sikh separatists, these anti-India rallies, as far as we can understand, are scheduled to go ahead unless some intervention takes place at the last moment. Trudeau is on test, and so are other leaders. Diplomatic relations could hinge on some of these very, very serious questions that concern, perhaps for the first time in many decades, the very safety of India's diplomats abroad. Let's introduce our experts on the panel today as we look at this alarming national security question. Joining us is one of the world's foremost experts on the Khalistani terrorism and its affiliated groups, is Terry Milewski. He's the author of, in fact, a book on the Global Khalistan Project, a veteran journalist based out of Canada. It's good to see you again, Terry. Also joining us on the program is military veteran, former Director General of Infantry, General Sanjay Kulkarni. Can we please bring him into the box and welcome him? There we see him, sir. Good to see you. Also joining us is veteran diplomat, Ambassador K.C. Singh, who said he's been keeping quiet on this entire issue for a long time, but this evening on the program, he's going to break his silence. He's concerned about what's happening to his fellow diplomats. I'm sure we'll hear from him in a moment, as we will from another veteran diplomat, Ambassador Manju Seth. Let's welcome her to the program as well. Welcome, everybody. Let me start by playing out a short clip. What did Justin Trudeau say when he was accused by journalists of soft peddling the Khalistan question? Listen in.
Prime Minister, we've seen a parade float depict the assassination of Indira Gandhi and posters calling on people to kill India. The Indian government says you're being soft on Sikh extremism because you rely on votes from that community. How can you demonstrate to them that they're wrong?
They are wrong. Canada has always taken extremely seriously violence and threats of violence. We've always taken serious action against terrorism, and we always will. We have an extremely diverse country, and freedom of expression is something that we have, but we will always make sure that we are pushing back against violence and extremism in all its.
So he says, Terry, that he is pushing back against violence and extremism in all its forms. The last time you were on this program, you said, give Canada till the 8th of July. Here we are on the 8th of July. From what I can tell, unless you know better, not just are these anti-India rallies scheduled to proceed, the posters have become more and more vile. One was even plastered across a temple, desecrating the temple. This is a quick look at the posters for anybody who may have missed them. And they are basically a kill call for India's diplomats, apart from being amplifying an anti-India pro-Khalistan message. Terry?
So far, yes, he has failed the test. What I said is, as you point out, what I said is that wait until Canada fails before punishing Canada for failing. Well, we're on the way to a failure now. The Prime Minister, as you just heard, said that we're going to always take serious action. Where is the serious action? Now, you look at this as a policeman in Canada and you say, well, you know, you could say that's free speech. On the other hand, you could say it's hate speech. On the other hand, you could say that it's a threat of violence. It's a death threat. I mean, they have painted targets on the backs of Indian diplomats all over the world, wildly implausibly, so that diplomats in Australia and San Francisco are alleged to be the killers of Hardip Nijar in Surrey, BC, which in the case of Australia, I believe is about 13,000 kilometers away. It's all ridiculous, but what about Canada's position? They have said, the foreign minister says this is unacceptable. Well, does that mean we won't accept it? If it doesn't mean we won't accept it, what does unacceptable mean? We are waiting to see if there is any action by Canadian authorities against the people who put up these signs. Are they even going to investigate the people who put up these signs? Do they know who put them up? If they don't know, why don't they know? And why is it impossible for a Canadian prosecution to say, okay, you call it freedom of speech, I call it hate speech, I call it a death threat, see you in court, buddy. And so far, we haven't seen it. That's been the problem for years and for decades in Canada, that we've said, oh, it's all freedom of speech, it's all freedom of speech. That emboldens them. That's why they were up again all night long, putting up signs all around Toronto, calling it a war zone. Well, if you call it a war zone and you show pictures of the wanted men who you call killers, I think that you're making a death threat. In Canada, that's illegal. It's time for a much more muscular attitude from the Canadian government to basically tell these Khalistanis that we've had enough.
Yeah. Before I open this up, one of the points that I think not everybody in our audience understands is how Trudeau's politics are linked to sections of the Khalistani vote. And you've made the point that one of his key allies actually supports calls for a so-called Khalistan referendum. So if you want to just explain the domestic politics in Canada that's playing out right now.
Well, very briefly, Prime Minister Trudeau is in a minority. That is to say, he doesn't have enough votes on with just his own party to pass legislation, essential legislation, in the House of Commons. And so he's made a pact, not really a formal coalition, but he's made a pact with the left-wing NDP party, the third party in the House of Commons in Canada, which is led by, guess who? Jagmeet Singh spent the early part of his political career going to Khalistani rallies, telling people that, oh no, we didn't blow up Air India back in 1985. The Indian government blew it up. They blew up their own plane. Yeah, that's a plausible theory, not. And so having established himself as a member of the fundamentalist wing, if you will, of the Khalistani movement, he then appeared to moderate himself and enter mainstream politics, federal politics, and now he holds the whip hand to some degree over the Trudeau government. So it doesn't mean to say he calls all the shots. It just means that Trudeau would have to think twice before driving the NDP members out of this so-called coalition. He may not want another election right now. The polls aren't looking so good. So don't tell me that there's no influence upon the Trudeau government, but I don't think that's what's determining the feeble response. The feeble response in Canada long precedes the arrival of Jagmeet Singh in politics. It's been there for decades. We just think it's India's problem. When 3 weeks before the Air India bombing, very short anecdote, 3 weeks before, the Indian government and the management sent the RCMP, the mounted police in Canada, an urgent telex saying, look, we're getting threats to attack our Indian planes leaving Canada. We must have, and we insist on having, absolute ironclad baggage security to prevent bombs being smuggled aboard. And you know what the police said in Canada? The RCMP said, those Indians, they're always complaining. They just want more free security, and they shelved it. They didn't even give it to the security agency, CSIS. And of course, as we all know, the bombs were smuggled aboard in suitcases in the checked baggage. Well, enough about that. My point is that we've been at this a long time, and we've been failing a long time. It's time to let these people know we're not going to take it anymore. You've gone too far. Death threats are not allowed in Canada. If we allow it, then I'll sing a different tune about what India should do respecting Canada.
Yeah. So let me bring in Ambassador Casey Singh. That's a very unequivocal intervention by Terry. There is a sense of frustration at the démarche diplomacy that has been applied thus far to what these governments are failing to do, in particular the Trudeau government. How do you see what's happening, Casey? Many of the faces on posters are people from your own fraternity. Some of them might be your friends. All of them are your colleagues.
No, as a general principle, I agree with the previous speaker that You can't be holding forth violent threats. Simple as that. No freedom of expression allows that under no constitution, including our constitution. But the issue is more complex than that. It's complex because this has got fired up after the Niger killing. And after the Niger killing, I think the government of India and the Canadian government needed to move very quickly to apprehend the killers of Niger. Because by word of mouth, it started that this has been done by India, it's been done by Indian agencies. So why was everybody asleep? Because that is the time that it needed to be stopped. That unless you stop it now, because you see, earlier Panchwad was killed in Pakistan, then you had Khanda killed in England, who died mysteriously, and this is the third death. So it's given fuel to the Khalistanis, and Khalistanis are not new there. Remember, 80 to 83, I was in New York with the consulate when Gurdial Singh Dhillon, a former speaker and very prominent Jat Sikh leader from the Maja, where the militancy was breeding in India, was sent as High Commissioner to Canada. 2 years he spent there. Because I think even then the government realized that the population of Sikhs in Canada is of a different mix. They are less educated. They are from rural backgrounds. They're more amenable to this kind of propaganda which comes out of India. And at that point, Punjab, militancy in Punjab was just beginning. So you could understand this, that this led to the support abroad. But when there is no militancy in Punjab, the question to be asked is, where are the leaders of Punjab? The prominent Sikh leaders of the Congress who have joined BJP are silent. There's no prominent leader in Congress who can speak up. You have a chief minister of Punjab who's cut hair, his beard is cut, his head, his hair are cut. So anybody who could speak to these guys has to be somebody with a certain standing in the and tradition.
But what should we be speaking and saying? Who do we speak to?
No, their government is doing the right thing. They have to speak to Trudeau. And
Yes.
Trudeau, as has just been explained, has domestic reasons, but it has to be explained to him. I tweeted one day, I said, yeah, please, let's get Khalistani. Let's get it in Vancouver. That's where you live. Very good. Why didn't you claim a part of Vancouver? There are a large number of Sikhs there. You are a majority in a number of places. So, just mark out your area and say, this is Khalistania. Very good. Raise your flag there. You can't be living in Vancouver and asking for Khalistan in Punjab, and nobody is asking for it. Now, the question arises, when Amrit Pal came in, why was the center silent for almost 6 months? And why was the state government not taking action, including AAP? So you allowed this for the first time after militancy in Punjab. You allowed Amrit Pal to rake it. And you took almost 9 months to take action when it was very clear from the beginning what he was up to. And now you go and lock him up somewhere in the Northeast after the damage is done. So is there a game at play here? That you want a kind of soft kind of thing which polarizes, which gets into domestic politics? What is the game?
What game would how would it be to anyone's advantage in India, Casey? I've got to push back on what you've just said. Amrit Pal, I know I heard all the conspiracy theories, but Niger, and I know Terry will come in on this, there's a working theory in Canada that this is actually intra-Khalistan gang warfare. So are you saying that the government of India should respond to rumor mongering, to whispers that India has got this assassination? Who do we respond to?
No, you had to tell the Canadian government quietly that please arrest the people. This kind of rumor mongering is going around, which will get inflamed. You can surely anticipate it. That is what politics and diplomacy is about. You know there's a situation building up. And the Khalistanis, but they are always, nobody took them seriously. They'll make some noise and they'll go away. They've captured some gurdwaras in USA there. But remember, and then there is the other side, that when you have the diaspora functions there, you don't see the Sikhs there in any large number. Is the government of India reaching out to the entire diaspora, or is there a majoritarianism you export there and therefore you worsen the divide that is already there? What exactly is happening? So I think this is not the way to do it. Vajpayee used to go abroad. He never used to hold those meetings. He reached out to the entire lot because you do not export your political differences abroad. So it's got complicated because Amrit Pal again came and raked it, because delayed action was here, because you allowed rumor mongering in Canada, and then the right wing has just captured the narrative. Now it's more difficult. Even the moderates get ensnared in it, and it becomes a bigger problem. So it's a complex issue. It is not simple as this, let's get rid of these guys. You can't get rid of them. Like I told you, from Dhillon's time in 1981, we've been wrestling with it. And that time, of course, the problem was there in Punjab. And now Punjab has been free of it for a long time. So how is this again getting revived?
Let me get General Kulkarni in. There are also clear links between pro-Pakistan sort of, groups, ISI proxies in Khalistan that has been there for a long time. There are still sort of militants of the Babbar Khalsa that have taken refuge in Pakistan, even in cities like Lahore, where they are able to openly actually roam around. But these kind of posters, unprecedented. I take Casey's point that, more measures could have been taken to quell the rumor mongering. But when we look at the security concerns, what troubles you as a military veteran?
Thank you, Barkha. Well, at the very outset, let's put it this way, that ever since 1971, I would put it this thing, in India, all along, the Sikhs have always denounced and, they have virtually termed it as doomed and discouraged all these kind of activities. And all these activities that are going abroad, they are of Sikh diaspora, yes, but they're not Indian citizens. They are maybe Canadians, maybe Americans, Australians, British, whatever they may be. They're not Indian citizens. And therefore, it becomes incumbent responsibility of those countries to take care of the Indian consulates abroad. So having said that, in India, you take it back, even before the Bangladesh war, when Chauhan, sometime around 12th of October 1971, put up an advertisement in the New York Times declaring Khalistan movement. He declared himself as the first president, Bhutto calling him over and saying, well, Lankana Sahib is open for you. Please go ahead and do. Americans interfering, Kissinger's role, everybody knows. Nixon's role, everybody knows. And since thereafter, and whatever is happening. But the Indian Sikhs understand this part of things. I go along with the Bhatia case, that certain things must be put, instantly they must take care of, because whatever it might happen, we saw what I saw myself, what was going on in Chandigarh before Amrinder was arrested and put in the Northeast. It was indeed bad, because these kind of things definitely, all said and done, people around didn't see. But when it comes to the defense, I would say, when it comes to the army, armed forces, it doesn't matter at all. Everybody knows that all these chaps have nothing to do. They are all those illiterates who are there abroad with thousands and thousands of acres of land. They have all the money to spare, and that is exactly what they're doing. Yes, certain things that the countries abroad must take action. They seem to be fishing in troubled waters. Pakistan has been doing the same thing, helping others to go along with it.
But you said that they're not Indian citizens. But there was a headline, Ambassador Manju said in the papers, that said the National Security Advisor, in talks with his counterpart in the United Kingdom, is now talking about deporting some of these elements, in particular those who are vandalizing Indian consulates. So this is sort of now moving beyond démarche diplomacy, and this concerns directly the safety of diplomats. Before you answer, I do also want to bring up on our screen a very interesting Sea Voter survey that actually talks about what it calls the absurdity of the Khalistan fantasy, making the point that there are more Sikhs in Delhi than there are in London, that even if you break the numbers down, you're actually talking about more Sikhs who live outside of Punjab in India, integrated, assimilated, than do in all countries put together outside India. So I think those are numbers that are important to put in perspective. Go ahead, Ambassador Manju Seth.
Yeah, absolutely. The numbers are small, but I think their, should I call it, nuisance value is extremely high. And the fact that they're able to, put up these posters and nobody stopped them, that is something which is, just very lax security on the part of the local Canadian authorities. And I think they should have made sure that this was full protection was given, and they should have been more vigilant at this point of time. And the fact that many of these may still be Indian citizens, because some of them had gone as asylum seekers. So I don't know if, and so there would be some numbers not given any citizenship as yet. But the fact remains that they are very, very anti-India, and they are extremely negative, and the fact that they are targeting our diplomats, I think, is unacceptable. And the Canadian authorities and the UK authorities and all the other countries where they are being, where this kind of rally is being promoted, and our diplomats are being targeted, and their photos being put and saying they are the face of the killers. I think that really has to, be stopped by the local authorities, whether they're Indian origin or Indian in nationality or they're refugees.
Let me ask you this. A few days ago, Terry was on the same program, and there were some guests who were suggesting it's time to actually, if it comes to this, let's ask the Canadian ambassador to leave. And Terry said, hold on, give it. Let's see what happens right up until the point that these so-called rallies take place. Would you as a diplomat say, okay, enough is enough, it's time to downgrade the relationship diplomatically? I want to ask all our three Indian guests this before I go back to Terry. Would you be in favor of it, ma'am?
Not at the moment. Let's see how this plays out. But yes, it will impact our bilateral relations, absolutely. And if there is no action taken and there's any harm of any kind, towards our diplomats or towards our premises, because it would be like an attack on India, I think then we will have to, declare him PNG and ask the ambassador to leave. But I think, again, we would, before we did that, we would try to look at all options before we actually go ahead and, say that please leave. But it may come to that if things do not improve and if this kind of activities are sort of, in a way, encouraged by being so soft on them. And I feel that the Prime Minister Trudeau has to be more firm, irrespective of his threat to his government.
General Kulkarni, would you say the time is here now to talk about downgrading relations?
Definitely. I think if, as I said initially, if they are not Indian citizens, then obviously their country seems to be supporting them for doing what they're doing. And therefore, I think one step was rightly taken, what they did in outside the UK's High Commissioner in Delhi. Remove the barricades and similar kind of actions taking place there. Then what would happen? It would be bad. It shouldn't be tit for tat. But definitely, I think our foreign minister has been very clear to give a clear warning. Look, it will affect our relationship. What's going on in Canada is definitely not good. What goes on in UK, USA, Australia, definitely not good. They have to take a stand. Yes, again and again, I repeat, they are Sikh diaspora, but most of them may not be Indian citizens. If they are not, obviously they must be deported if they're Indian citizens. And if they are not, for whatever the reasons, if they're moving freely and then taking the cover of freedom of speech and freedom of action, I think it's highly incorrect, because what we have just heard Trudeau speak about, the way he said that we take strict action, we are not soft on terror. Well, what's going on in Canada is not just soft, it's not acceptable at all. And therefore, I think we must take action against these countries.
Yeah. Ambassador K.C. Singh, you said it's complex. Where we stand, most Indians are looking at governments unwilling to intervene in what is essentially an open call for violence against India's diplomats. That's the bottom line. In terms of options, what are India's options? What are options you would agree with?
No, you can't compromise on the security of missions or security of our diplomats. But remember, this is not the first time. We had a consulate in Vancouver once overrun. People, a sword-wielding person came in. So there's a background to it. This is not something which is new. But the still range of this thing is tremendous. Because of exploiting the Niger story, the extreme right wing, the radicals have been able to rope in the relatively more moderate parts of the diaspora. So I think what we have to see is you don't want to glue them together. You want,
but there's a question. There's a question for you from Saurav Vishisht, one of our Mojo members. He says the orchestrated nature of the so-called Khalistan referendum and these rallies precludes Niger. Niger is an excuse to mount a spectacle which was coming anyways.
Look what happened. They conducted their referendum. What was the net result? It just died a natural death. Nothing. It didn't amount to anything. They're provoking you. They'll try provoking you. And the more you get provoked, the more it fuels them. You basically kill them off by cutting them off from the moderate parts of the diaspora. You reach out to the moderate. But at the same time, not at the moment. At the moment, the Canadian government has to act. And I think above all, they have to catch the killers of Niger. And that'll completely pull the rug from under the extreme radicals and say, it's you guys only who killed him. So why are you naming other countries and so on and so forth? That is the kind of answer which deflates the radicals, that you put your finger where it is required. If you confront them, that is what they want. That's exactly what they want. That is how it then exacerbates. So we have to have a twin thing. Tell the Canadians we want A, B, C. Draw the red line. I haven't seen the red lines in public, just statements from External Affairs Minister. You just say we are expecting 1, 2, 3. Canadians, we've given them time, we are talking to them. But in case of the rally, definitely say if there are any more posters and your police is looking around, after all, if they're large crowds, the police must be somewhere around, then we'll be forced to take some action. And then you take graded action. What that graded action is, whether it's withdrawal of ambassador or it's downgrading of certain other relations, etc., we can afford to do it because relationship with Canada, commercial or economic, is not at such a high level that it will affect Indian economy. So we can afford to do that. But there's always a graded thing. But I can't understand why we can't reach through to Trudeau. I'm sure they're reaching out through diplomatic channels, but certainly the seriousness of this needs.
Yeah, and I think you make the point about the difference between what's said in public and what's being said on the back channel. So far, this is the public statement, and then I'll come to you, Terry, right after that. This is a public statement from the Foreign Ministry. Listen in.
Look, our sense is that these posters inciting violence against our diplomats and our diplomatic premises abroad are unacceptable, and we condemn them in the strongest terms. With respect to Canada, the matter has been strongly taken up with the Canadian authorities, both in New Delhi and in Ottawa. We have called on the Government of Canada to take all steps to ensure the safety of our diplomats and security of our diplomatic missions in Canada. It is a matter of concern that freedom of expression and speech is once again being misused by anti-India elements based in Canada and elsewhere. And we continue to press the Canadian side to ensure that our diplomats can carry out their normal functions without fear or intimidation. We have seen some comments, at least the media reports about comments by Prime Minister Trudeau. But let me make the larger point that the issue is not about freedom of expression, but its misuse for advocating violence, for propagating separatism, and for legitimizing terrorism.
Terry, here's a question for you. You heard Ambassador K.C. Singh say that, there were kind of rumors that followed the killing of Niger, a designated terrorist. You have some reason to believe that this is intra-Khalistan gang warfare. Go ahead.
Well, yes, I do. None of this proves that this was a gangland hit instead of a hit by some magic global Indian diplomatic death squad. And very briefly, it includes the fact, and it is a fact, that there was bad blood between Mr. Niger and Ripudaman Singh Malik, a name that you will remember. He was the multimillionaire who financed the Baba Khalsa, the terrorist group which blew up Air India back in '85. There was definitely bad blood between the two. There was a lawsuit between the two, and Niger was seen harshly criticizing Malik in very vituperative terms before Malik's death, after Malik had written a sort of, it must have seemed like a treacherous letter to the Khalistan movement, to Prime Minister Modi, congratulating him in the most effusive terms on the wonderful things that the Modi government had done for the Sikhs, which must have seemed like pretty dangerous to his former friends in the Khalistan movement. If he'll say that, what else is he going to say? It's easy to imagine. I can't prove any of this, but it's easy to imagine that if you're already at daggers drawn with Malik, and he says that, maybe it's time to shut him up. And then on the other side, we also have this videotape of Malik's interviews before his demise, in which he criticizes Niger, and in fact, even at one point says that Niger was a threat to his life. So you have warring camps. One leader dies mysteriously in a gangland hit. Then the other leader, perhaps it was the Malik camp, getting revenge. Perhaps this was a squalid local gangland squabble between rival gangsters. If you see it in that light, then there's not much ammunition here for blaming India, which is what the whole game is. But let me just add to that, this truth isn't the issue here. Sikhs for Justice and its hangers-on around the world, they don't care that we don't believe all of this nonsense about some diplomat in San Francisco or Birmingham, England, or all over the world that being responsible for the death of Hadib they know it's absurd, of course. They don't expect anyone to believe it. They know it's nonsense, but they don't care about facts. They're fighting an information war, and they know that they can fire up their troops with this sort of nonsense, that some people will believe it, enough people will believe it to keep the campaign going, to antagonize the enemy, and to compel some sort of a crackdown. Then we can say, aha, you see, they're repressing us. Yeah. They're overplaying their hand. They're persecuting the Sikhs. And we, at Sikhs for Justice, we just happen to be here to fight for you.
So I think that's the point that Casey made as well, that you've got to fight that information battle. I do have to close. Let me give you a 20-second, Terry. What do you think is going to happen in a few hours from now?
Well, I think that we're going to see nothing happen. I think that the Canadian government is not going to do anything. I think that the Indian government is going to say, right, you did not take any action. We consider this prosecutable in Canada. We don't see why you're not prosecuting people. Either you explain that to us in pretty short order, or we review all our bilateral relations to include your hopes for a free trade agreement, for better access to the Indian market, better commercial ties, opportunities for investment, the whole thing. You come knocking on our door, we might just be too busy to see you that day until you take some sort of serious action here. And I also believe that you should wait, cool it just a little bit. Don't start throwing ambassadors out. Canada and India need to work together on this. Don't fall into their game. Now the two governments are at war with each other. Don't play that game. Wait until, keep your cool, keep it behind the scenes, negotiate, sit down, talk about this. What do we got? Because together, both Canada and India, they both know what side they're on here. And they both know that they need to handle this cleverly, in a sophisticated fashion, not by yielding to emotion, exactly what Sikhs for Justice wants us to do, and say, okay, let's go to war, let's throw out the diplomats, let's withdraw the diplomatic security.
Yeah, that's an important point, but in a way, in a way, it's a Hobson's choice, as it were, for India, because it needs some visible demonstration of the fact that this is going to be clamped down on. We will see what happens in a few hours from now. Thank you very much, Ambassadors Casey Singh, Manju Seth, General Kulkarni, and as always, to Terry, we learned so much from you, and to our audience. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.
We started Mojo right here in this basement. Just 4 people, 4. And now we're about to hit our first 1 million subscribers. So this is to say thank you to all of you for your support, for your respect, and for your encouragement. We've always gone to where the story is. During the pandemic, when television's big anchors were hunkered down in their studios or at their homes, we hit the road. We traveled from Delhi to Kerala, covering 30,000 kilometers in a small car, reporting from inside ICUs and inside slum tenements. Whether it's flash floods or war zones, we've always put our boots on the ground. In fact, we're just back from Punjab, tailing the Khalistani fugitive Amritpal Singh. And through all of this, we have always put you, the people, first. In an age of partisan polarized media where most journalists are either chamcha ya morcha, we believe the story is sacred and the truth of the story is what matters. And now as we get ready for the next step, we need your help. Become a Mojo member and get first access to all our big interviews. Get a chance to ask our newsmakers questions. Get a chance to write and report for us for both our website and our channels. And also, interact with me and my colleagues directly through AMA sessions. Literally, ask me anything. Click on the join now right next to the subscribe button, and yes, also subscribe if you haven't yet, and become a Mojo member for just 159 rupees a month. Hope to see lots of you in our community.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.